Um, let's see. Hey, can you hear me?
All right. One sec, guys, while people join in. Okay. All right, guys. We're going to be going over some renovation stuff today. So, we're going to talk about different types of problem solving. But if anybody has any questions, anything that they're dealing with, we don't have to keep it to that. If anybody has any broad sort of questions or anything that you want to talk about, just drop it in the chat. Let me know. And we can also answer it because honestly, there's just so many things that are going on. I think recently the interest rate announcement came out and it came out at like 2.9%. And it's just like there's a lot of buzz around that. Still feels a little bit early to go over to be like certain on exactly what's going to happen. I mean, everybody's still talking about our interest rate's going to drop, our interest rate's going to drop. People are talking about the how things are supposed to be timed, March drop, April drop, or whether it's going to be end of 2024. People are going over all kinds of things, and truth is nobody really knows. But there are some things that you can look at to make decisions. But that's kind of like long term planning or just hedging your bigger moves. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have to deal with the day to day stuff, the things that we deal with all the time, whether you're a landlord, whether you're house flipping, whatever type of investor you are, you're going to have to deal with some stuff. So the regular problem solving. And that's where you tighten up all the money and make sure that you're saving, optimizing, and all that stuff. So, if you have questions that go around that, go for it. Drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we're just going to go over renovation based stuff when it comes to problem solving, troubleshooting. And this stuff is going to apply largely to things. It doesn't matter whether or not you are house flipping, it doesn't matter whether or not you are a landlord or you're doing burrs, trying to just rehab a place. This stuff will apply across the board. Okay. So I know we're doing this on Discord. So anybody who hasn't used the platform before or anything, by all means, just you can drop your questions in the chat. If you're on desktop or your computer, it's going to be in the top right. If you're using it on your phone, I don't really know how it looks like, but you can always drop it in the top right. Other than that, if you want to ask a question, you want me to draw you on stage, let me know. I will just I think there's a hand raise button, but either way, just let me know somehow. I'll put you on the stage if you have any questions, and we can go over anything you want. We don't have to keep it to renovations, broad range stuff. Okay. All right. Let me see. Oh, okay. I'm gonna invite you here. How do I? Here you go. Here you go, Roman. I'm just gonna put you up here. How things are going with you? How's it going, man?
Yo, what's up? How's it going, guys?
Not too bad. We're gonna
Yeah,
try out the. Gonna try out Discord for you. How's it working for you on your end? Are you doing it on your phone?
yeah, I'm on my phone right now. It's pretty actually like, and I'm on like my phone data, so it's pretty crispy right now, the sound, so it's nice.
Awesome. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Good. All right, man. So yeah, I think I want to just get into a couple things because honestly, my mind's been burning with a lot of this stuff. I just got off a session and somebody was asking some really good questions. I'm like, okay, a lot of people have some of these things that they want to talk about when it comes to like the renovation structure and everything because right now money is just straight up tight for a lot of
Yeah.
people, right? And whether or not you're just waiting for things in the market or trying to do whatever it is you're trying to do to kind of pace out or time things, you want to make sure that your finances are under the control. And for those of us who have been forced to hold places, adding additional units right now is one of the best ways that you can optimize your investment portfolio. So I want to go over like some of the things that we're doing, right? So on an investor portion of things, you can look at different strategies like land severance. You can densify the property. I mean, they are obviously making it easier to densify our properties into multi-units. So you can do additional ADUs. You can do garden suites. You can convert garages. You can add units into your basement, second floor units. I mean, the city's putting into place a lot of things that are making these things easier and even making the permitting process go a little bit smoother. So since that's happening, we want to make sure that we can tap into this as investors. And the thing about that is if you're a landlord, you're holding a property and you want to make it multi-residential, you want to convert a property from a duplex to a triplex, you got to understand that no matter how much a renovation is going to cost you, how much that's going to cost you to do, if you have the capacity to leverage about $100,000, $100,000 at today's rates is going to run you about $700. So if you're able to create a new unit for $100,000 and that's going to run you $700 in mortgage payments, you're effectively going to be well in the green once you rent that property out. So it's definitely something to consider if you're planning on holding something for any significant length of time, right? Let's say you're not planning on selling. Maybe you signed up for a fixed rate mortgage, and if you signed up for a fixed rate mortgage, you might not be in a position to break that mortgage. You might not want to sell it because if you went fixed a year ago and you went from a 3-year fixed, your breakage fees are going to be extortionary. Like I know some people are paying $30, $40, $50,000 on breakage fees to just sell their property and get out. So sometimes people are getting a lot of pressure from their mortgage payments and other things, and other bills that are coming up on their property, and they're thinking, how can I just exit this property and move along? But when even on the exit, they get a little bit more trouble with their finances on the way out, because when they went in on fixed, and that can be a problem. So if anybody has a fixed rate mortgage and you're trying to figure out a solution to that, you can drop a comment to your situation and like we can talk about some of the things that we do in order to maneuver that situation a little bit. But let's just talk about the renovations, okay? Densification is a big thing right now. You see, people are buying tiny homes on Amazon, man. You can go on Amazon and buy a tiny house for $26,000. It's not going to be a quality product. You can build, by the way, something far superior to what they're selling on Amazon right now for $26,000. If any of you wants to look that up, just type in tiny home on Amazon. I think it's $26,000 delivered. Right? All these influencers are making all these funny TikToks about it. I mean, it's an interesting product, right? And it's a solution to a very serious problem. But when it comes to zoning and permitting, we're diving into that right now will be tricky, so we won't do that. But just on the topic of making sure that you can build something and keep the cost down, that's what we want to address. So let's start off with a couple of like basic things. One of the things, first of all, I'll answer your question. Those tiny homes need permits. So anything that you're going to put is going to require a permit. The trick to it, if you don't want to have to do a permit, is that you got to keep it on wheels, right? So this is why if you have tech, and even that, you're going to need some different types of licensing and classification, and you can do them as Airbnbs or different types of things. But if you do the tiny homes that's on a trailer, it's technically an RV, and if you're just parking it somewhere, it's not going to be classified as a permanent structure. People do all kinds of other things, like they put them on stilts. If you're looking at property to buy, and sometimes you find these absurdly cheap properties that are out God knows where, and then they actually somewhere in the fine print tell you it's not actually a house. This is like considered a mobile home, and you're buying that, but you're paying rent on the land. So you're buying the mobile home, you're not buying the land. That's what's kind of happening there. So there's a lot of gray area, and because this is all some relatively speaking, it's not new, but it's becoming more and more mainstream. They're still ironing out their control mechanisms as to how they classify this stuff. You don't see this too often in the city, but a lot of people with student rentals are starting to do these creative things just because of the bills and the cost of living going up. They're investing and putting in ADUs and in various forms and fashions into their backyards or whatever it is or wherever it is that they can. So we're going to be able to showcase this because we're working on doing this at one of our properties where we're going to sever the land and we're going to try to put three essentially tiny homes on it, see how that works out, because it would be a great mechanism to quickly bypass all the construction pieces if you're able to just buy and plop down three small houses, right? Something that's effective. And, the financing on it won't be bad if you have real estate to leverage. But let's move on to the actual renovation portion because I don't want to dance around it. By the way, does anybody have any questions about anything we're talking about? Again, drop it in the chat or just prompt me so I can let you ask your question, okay? All right, so renovations. Outside of permits and everything like that, some of the biggest things that people end up having trouble costing down on is when they're trying to hire a contractor and the contractor is going to give you a big cost. Where you ultimately save a big penny, and I know, Roman, you've talked about this before with one of the recent extensions you did. You went over and hired trades direct. And trades, you can hire them direct in various ways. You can do this through just approaching the people and paying them by the job, or you can hire trade direct by the day, but then it requires management. But you hired people to build your extension, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. We went to there was like a big townhouse complex being built. I talked directly to the framers, and they threw it up in 2 weekends. A big extension on our house.
Yeah, and how much was the labor to do that?
It was like honestly around like 10 grand.
$10,000. Okay, so
Yeah,
here's the thing: professional framers to frame up an extension to a property for 10 grand is a steal.
For them, it was 2 weekends, so they got 10 grand in 2 weekends, and I got a cheap, you know what I mean? I got a cheap deal, but it was very cheap considering like the cost to build that extension by market was like north of 50.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the thing is that if you're able to tap into somebody else's infrastructure like that and hire the trade direct, and it is something that you can either be patient with or do in another way, that's I feel like a more extreme example of a way to save. But ultimately, if you're hiring trades direct as opposed to the contractor is going to piece everything together. But where you are able to really control your costs is when you start to you kind of want to not necessarily be the day-to-day contractor. However, you want to make sure to still be able to piece things together in a sequence. If you're doing the work already, you might as well be able to piece things together. So we want to break things down into certain stages of construction, and we're going to talk about them just as if though you're doing a full thing. Not so much so because you are going to be doing that, but you'll understand how to apply saving methods throughout different stages of these renovations. So let's say, for example, let's say full basement renovation. That's going to be the most standard thing, right? You're going to start off with some of the structural stuff, right? And you're going to move on to, with structure, you're going to do openings. So like windows, you're going to be doing doorways, anything like that, and any structural support. Okay, let's assume you're doing everything with permits, and let's assume you're going to be doing everything to pass inspection should you be inspected. Okay. Doing structural work is difficult. You should never try to save money on people doing structural work. But where labor ends up becoming expensive is when you have the same people doing the structural work. Those end up being the same people doing all the other work. So when you start to have people coming in and the structural guys, which are going to be skilled, knowledgeable, talented people, are also doing the basic framing, you end up paying an arm and a leg for the basic framing. So where you are able to just get, let's just say, the assembly line workers, if you're able to hire trade direct for assembly line workers, you can get people to come and just do framing really quickly. And for these guys, and this is where some people, if they're doing jobs that are kind of on a weekend, or you're able to bring somebody in and do a small framing job on a weekend, where an apartment, you can get a couple of professional framers on their Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, to come in on a weekend or two, and they'll be happy to make a few bucks to do things this way. And you can, and this is a great way to cost down and you get professional grade work. The alternative is you hire them, sure, as during the Monday to Friday on the 9 to 5, but you're going to pay their more regular rates. But ultimately, when you hire Trade Direct, the only thing they won't pay attention to is the sequencing of the work. So you have to have an understanding of the sequencing of the work and how to make sure that you don't have to backpedal on work. Now, what do I mean by backpedaling on work? Understanding the sequence of your renovations is really important so that you're not redoing things. People will often frame things up and then realize, oh, we need a window there, or frame things up and realize that we need duct work there. I don't want to get too nitty gritty with it, but I just want to point out that the methodology here behind saving money in this and to avoid those heavy contractor fees is to understand the sequencing, and the money is made in the sequencing. Contractors' responsibility, and they don't always do a great job of this, but their responsibility is to make sure that all the work comes together nicely and cohesively. And that is what you want to make sure to do in Loot. And you can do this with systems. As long as you have systems, you'll be able to put everything in place in a fashion that will save you money. So if you hire people to do structural work, they're not necessarily going to be the same people that are going to do basic stuff like framing and then drywalling, right? The two most expensive things that people often pay for outside of structural things is electrical and plumbing. I'm sure enough of you will know that a master electrician is going to be massively expensive. Like they're going to charge an arm and a leg for the hour, and the same thing with a master plumber. Now, the thing about a lot of this work is that most of this work today doesn't need to be done by these master electricians or master plumbers. Like a proper businessman, master electrician or master plumber, what they do is they go in there, they lay out what it is that they're going to do, like in the form of like a plan, or they're going to do some drawings, and then they get their apprentice to come in and do the work. But as far as what you as a consumer are being charged, you are being charged the master electrician rates, or maybe something less depending on the size of the job. But the point is that you ultimately, and this is what contractors do, is they will get their own guy, their own person to come in there, and they will run all the electricals, and they'll be like an apprentice. They'll run all the electricals, they'll run all the plumbing. Plumbing right now, if you do it with PEX, which is like the plumbing, the plastic plumbing. We use Wurzbo. It's less prone to leaks and problems, but effectively when you're running those, you run them similarly to how you would run electrical lines. So you're just fishing lines, and you have to have somebody just know some of the basic things about how to tack things and how to make everything tidy. But if you can hire that right, you're not going to pay a lot. Like you can hire people, and I know some of our students do hire people do this type of work for like $25-30 an hour, and you can get a lot done. And just imagine that even if you're paying somebody well in this, somebody in the trades is getting paid $7,000 a month, and you're able to take somebody on for a month-long project. Imagine the amount of work that they can do in a month, and then compare that to how much contractors are charging you. Now, again, cautioning people, if you are going to do something like this, you have to be prepared to have some input, right? The whole thing about being detached is that you don't have to think, and you can focus on other areas of your business. And if you want to focus on different investment avenues, that's fine. But in a time where you are trying to either preserve, conserve, or you want to do something repeatedly, the money that you can save if you're doing these types of projects repeatedly become difficult to ignore as you start to move through your business journey. Right? It's like if you're going to do 3-4 renovations, and let's say renovating each apartment costs you $50,000 with a contractor, and then you decide that you want to start saving. How much can you save? Typically by self-managing, you can save about 30% cost. And I'm talking about across the board. We're talking about materials, we're talking about labor, we're talking about everything. Just making sure to sequence and having your own input, you should be able to save 30%. Now, if you're going to save 30% and you're doing this on, let's say you do 2 house flips a year, 3 house flips a year, and these will cost you $150,000. This is now a salary. Like people talk about wanting to quit their jobs, get into real estate, and like, how do I go about doing it? Well, the easiest way to have more money in your pocket is to save it, to be honest. Like it's limited, but the thing is that if you're doing something regularly, it becomes another revenue stream, right? So sometimes there's these guys who are talking a lot about converting converting expenses into revenues where possible. As you work with the same people and they start to understand your work, and you can do this with contractors too. And if you can work with a contractor who will be fair with you as to how much they pay, is kind of they take a what they make on a job is more like your project manager, what you would pay a project manager. Then it's fine, it's totally worth it. But where you start to find really expensive costs and renovations, it's because the margins on that contractors are making can be quite substantial. So you have to measure that out. So plumbing and electrical, you can save massively on those if you do things the way contractors do things. Okay? And you don't have to know all the ins and outs about construction. You just have to know the right people who have the basic understanding, because there's a lot of good trades out there who are lacking in something. And this is how, like, that's just the nature of the business. But if you're able to plug them into your system, you'll be able to save a pretty penny on this. Okay, so plumbing, electrical, those are usually the most expensive things. And when it comes to sequencing of work and navigating permits, this is also where people struggle sometimes. Like upgrading electrical lines, upgrading electrical panels, right? People sometimes are not sure as to whether or not they should be doing that at the beginning of their project or the end of the project. And that's something that you need to think about depending on the scope of the work. I find that it's often easier to do these types of upgrades towards the end of the project, largely because, when things are done, you can have somebody come in and collect. The biggest problem that people face is that a licensed electrician is not necessarily going to want to come in and connect all these wires that he doesn't know where they go because it's his license on the line. So that's the problem that a lot of people face. They go and they find a master electrician and they say, "Hey, are you willing to do just this portion?" And they're like, "No, I don't want to be touching other people's work." And this is why sometimes the relationship is important. So in order to build the relationship, this is where contractors come in to be very handy, is that they have a relationship. Like our construction company has a guy, and the guy knows that the people who are doing our work know what they're doing. And they'll come in, they'll do a soft check, or they'll tell us a couple of things that they think at the beginning of the job, and then they come in at the end of the job, connect everything, and it passes inspection. Right. And we do the same thing with the plumbers. The plumbers, while everything is still exposed, we have the apprentice class workers come in and do that, they're competent people, but they run everything. The master plumber comes in, does all the connections, make sure that everything is in line. And there you go. And then you have everything. And if you want to take that one step even further, you can always bring them in the beginning of the project. Just tell them that you want them to come in for a consult, and you'll be able to get a consult, ask how things should be done, and then move on your way. This is something that people do usually in some of the early stages of their work. And then you have to decide whether or not this is for you. If it's in line with your nature and you enjoy it, some people very much do, then go for it. If you do not have an affinity towards this, then definitely hire it out. But if you enjoy this type of thing and you find that it's interesting and the money to you is definitely worth saving, and this is, let's say, an avenue for you to stop doing a day job, right? Then this should be something you should consider looking into and understanding more about how to do this so that you can bring your costs down. Okay. Now, moving on from there. You do all these electrical. Okay. I've done two of my personal homes. As the owner of a multifamily project, can you do all of the electrical? I've done that on two of my personal homes. Okay, so I can tell you for sure that in the residential class of property, if you're the home owner, you can pull your own electrical permit still, and you can go and do your own work on your own personal property. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. That's a good question, and I can find out, and we can talk about it later. But I don't know at what point. Like when you say multifamily, are you talking about more than 3 units? So I know that up to I think 5 units, anything above 4 units. So I know that up to 4 units, we've had people do their own permits on electrical, but we haven't had anybody pull. Like honestly, if you have multi-unit property, there really isn't much of a reason. Those properties are usually pretty standardized. The only time people have to do anything that's a little more creative to save a buck is largely on the smaller non-standardized multi-residential properties. and these are where people try to save. At a certain point, when you're getting into the bigger multifamily properties, whatever got you there, or the connections or the infrastructure that you have, shouldn't require you to be this creative. So that some of this creative, employing some of these creative solutions into solving small to medium renovation projects, problems in small to medium renovation projects, they're really for when you have like that initial cushion portfolio. Okay. So it's not at the point where you're doing bigger things. And honestly, when you're doing bigger things, you want to be doing everything very much by the book, because one, it's easier. It's less costly to do those because everything is standardized. Because everything is standardized, this is why a lot of people eventually graduate out of the small multi-residential into the larger one, is because it's just everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. You don't open up walls and find things you weren't expecting to find. You know, if there's drawings for the building, things are where they say they are, so you don't have to worry about these things as much. But ultimately, while you're still working on the smaller projects, you want to employ some of these saving strategies, right? Because everything adds up. Like, it's crazy. Supplies even. Contractors are unlikely, if you hire them in like a bulk price kind of thing, unlikely going to pass on additional savings on supplies. For example, when sales happen, like, and they happen all the time, right? And you are able to pit people against each other, pit wholesalers against each other on prices, right? Those savings aren't going to go to you. But if you start taking control of your project and you want to be a little bit more, which oftentimes people do anyway, they want to be more involved in what supplies, what finishes, what type of product is going into their homes, you'll be able to find very competitive pricing on all kinds of things. So for the best price, for example, right, the best price that I think we're finding on engineered hardwood is like $3.10 a square foot, right? And so if you're doing renovation projects, don't shop from Home Depot. Okay, don't shop from Home Depot. Like, that's the last place you want to go. You want to be shopping at wholesalers, and you're gonna find that. And this is how I see things. I'll say this as it is. I find that there's three types of wholesalers I go to. There's Indian wholesalers, Chinese wholesalers, and Middle Eastern wholesalers. Okay, and they all seem to have a different. Let's just say they have different strengths in terms of what is the quality to price ratio of their product. Okay. And part of the reason why I think this happens is because India and China are obviously some of the biggest exporters of a lot of the renovation materials. And I don't understand completely what they do in the Middle East, or where they're getting their supplies for, or what their manufacturing is, but they also seem to get a lot. And there's always a guy who has a relationship with somebody back home, and then they're just able to bring things in quite cheap. Now, what I found in my case was that some of the Indian wholesalers, they were more competitive when it came to things like flooring. Some of the Chinese wholesalers, they had better things when it came to tile products or like plumbing, faucets, anything. So, and you get an idea of this on sites like Amazon or anything like that. But in terms of where the product is coming for, what is good and what is not. But ultimately, you want to make sure to shop things there, and you'd be astounded at how much you can save on all the finishing supplies of your property. Certain things don't seem to change, like when it comes to raw materials, lumbers, drywalls, anything like that. Things that are heavy, not very cost effective to ship. If wholesalers will sell it marginally cheaper, but it's not going to be a massive difference or anything like that. What I do find crazy that some people are paying for, so like bags of insulation, right? If you ever have to do any kind of insulation to anything, we spend for your standard R12 at 16-inch, right? That's going to be the standard thing that people are going to install into their walls. At Home Depot, people are paying like $80-$90 for a bag of this stuff, right? The wholesalers just, sell it for $45 to $50, depending. You can get it. I buy it for $45 a bag, right? So just for that comparison, it is a massive difference. So imagine if you're going to spend, like, what they say. They say that how much is the contractor going to charge you? Materials times 2. So if you're spending $30,000 in materials on a project, then you're going to the contractor is going to charge you $30,000 in labor, right? Roughly, that's the general thing that they say. Now, if you're going to be Now, on materials alone, if you can save 20 to 30%, you're doing quite well. And that's something that you ought to be paying attention to, right? So, off the shelf product isn't going to do too well when you're shopping Home Depot. They're really selling conveniences. That is one of the easiest ways to save, and it will also give you a lot of context of understanding what it is that you're doing in a product. What it is you're doing to your property, what type of materials, and so on and so forth. I'm gonna invite Ping. I don't know if Ping, if you want to join, just drop it in the chat if you want to come on stage and say anything. But what else was I gonna say here? Yeah, so you're able to save. So let's recap really quickly. Some of the things that we said we want to make sure to save on. You want to save on labor by applying the correct labor to the right stage of whatever renovation you are talking about, or sorry, that you are doing. Okay, labor. The next thing you want to save is on sequencing of work. Okay, sequencing of work is a little bit more complicated, but we'll definitely be able to get into that. I'll give you a couple examples of problems that happen due to improper sequencing of work. It's not just self-managing people that have these problems. It's also contractors. They just mess up all these silly things, and I'll get into that in a little bit again. Hiring hiring masters of a trade to do something that maybe they weren't supposed to, or that you didn't need them to do, things that they would otherwise get apprentices to do. And finally, materials. Materials is the other area that you're able to save pretty well on. And if you're able to do this type of, if you're able to shop long enough, you'll be able to take advantage of all kinds of sales. Just so you know those really beautiful 2 foot by 4 foot tiles, those giant ones, right? They go really well in a big space, but they look nice. Home Depot sells them for like $4 to $5 a square foot. I'm picking them up for like $2.20 a square foot, which is insane. And this is amazing product. And ultimately, you just have to be able to recognize whether or not, like, people have associate price to quality. It takes a little bit of practice to identify what is a quality product, but once you get the hang of it, you're going to be able to reap the benefits. And when it comes to flooring, this is a good example where sometimes the mistake that a lot of investors make, where they end up getting charged more on the labor, is they buy an absurdly cheap flooring product that is too difficult to install. And when that product comes in and you start using it, the guys take twice as long to install it. So you kind of have to have a bit of an understanding. But this is where, if you just talk to the people, even us who know about these things, we'll be able to very quickly tell you like what it is that you should look out for in each stage. And this is why, as you go through different stages of your renovation project, you should understand what type of materials. And once you figure that out, you write down your manual, and then you have your own little booklet as to what type of materials you're going to buy from where. And then you always source that same materials from those same sources that you're buying from. And at some point, you can give that booklet to whoever is project managing for you, and then you're kind of out of the picture. So this is building a system to your renovation project, and by doing so, you're gonna be saving money all across all of your properties, whether you're doing you're adding density to your property, or you're flipping property, or you're doing whatever. So those are the main things. Ping, how's it going?
Great.
Awesome.
I haven't been here for a while, so I'm excited.
Yes. Anything you want to chime in to say, or?
You know, it's funny because I was just going over some layout design for the new project that we just acquired.
Yeah.
And the layout is easy, but I noticed that every time that I'm touching on the design, like the how to make that look a little bit better, more like a finished product, that part is giving me a lot of stress because there's just so many different design. And you know, sometimes you overthink, because I started looking at Pinterest, I started looking into, you know, like some of the current projects that we had in the same area, and it's just a lot of information. And so, question for you, actually, this is for my own question as well. How do you design the previous project that you, well, previous project that you designed? How did you come up with all the I guess finished materials? Because in your position, you're balancing between the price, right? Because as house flipper, we always want to like keep the budget under control, versus the current mod, like to have that modern design.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's the look versus the budget. How do you balance these two out?
Well, So, okay. So first of all, how to establish the look. I'll tell you how I do it, and I'll tell you how I know some other students are doing it. Some other students, some of the ways they do it is they go look at they call in different realtors, right? So when they have a property, they're looking to work on it. They'll call in like local realtors, and while those realtors come in, they also talk about like they will show pictures of what it is that is selling well and what is not selling well. So you're able to get data points. I personally like to go and visit properties. So you can visit an array of properties. You shouldn't only visit properties that are what you're looking to buy. You should also visit properties that are like what you're looking to sell, right? And so you'll be able to garner perspective. So visit properties, see what's in, because there's all kinds of people that are, you don't have to reinvent the wheel in this case. You can see what is currently in design, and you can see what sells. As real estate investors, we have to make sure to always balance out not imposing our own personal taste into what it is that we're doing, because we are ultimately serving a client base. We're serving a consumer. Is that consumer a tenant, or is that consumer a home buyer? You identify the consumer, go look at a property that you think that consumer is going to buy, and whichever one sells the way you want it to, or is most comparable to whatever you have or are looking to buy, go with that, right? So, for example, I know that what is in right now in like the higher end homes is they all have this almost like Japanese Zen oak, or like lighter. It's on the yellow side of floor, right? That is definitely very interesting to a lot of people right now. So the Zen feeling floor, the oak floor, very neutral, right? And then they still have the black handles with the white doors that are coming in. The white tiles, you know, everybody always used to do the white bathrooms for quite a while, the black and the white bathrooms. It still looks good, but it's definitely getting overplayed. So many people are doing it, and the tiles have become, those tiles in particular have become so cost effective. Like even Home Depot sells them for $2 a square foot, which it doesn't get much cheaper than that. So there's so much volume of that all the homes look more or less the same. Now you might say, why fight what works if that is working, right? You still want to look at what is a little bit more progressive. If you're keeping the home, try to stick to what's timeless. Now that's good. That's a whole other conversation, but sticking to what's timeless, and we can go into how to identify such things. But in terms of balancing out the look, what if you maybe can't afford it? You can always get very, very, very close to that aesthetic, right? And ultimately, I don't want to get into like the color wheel or how to use that or how to look at the color wheel in terms of contrasting colors and seeing what goes together. But just visit those homes, take pictures, try to get samples, go to different flooring people, go to different places that sell cabinets, and see what goes together. Ultimately, this part is a lot of work, but you have to really, this part is work. But you figure it out once, and then you do it on repeat.
Yeah. Well, it's only because you're busy, so that's why like I'm trying to like really look into design myself.
Dude, go to IKEA. IKEA is great for that type of stuff.
Okay.
You go to IKEA and just look at the showrooms.
Okay, let me ask you another question. So we decided to keep the kitchen. At least I wanted to just keep the kitchen because it's a granite countertop. It's the cabinets is still in a very decent condition. It just looks a little outdated. I kind of wish I can show you the picture. I'll show everybody a picture. Actually, let me do that quickly, so I don't have to over explain this part.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. 1 second.
Does it let you share screen?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is the home. You guys can all see the screen, right? Okay, so we have decided to actually keep, and by the way, we're just bouncing idea in front of people so they can understand your train of thoughts. Okay, so when we're seeing something like this, when everything's actually in a very decent condition, this is not quartz countertop, this is an actual granite countertop. The only difference is that, like, so our conclusion is that we're gonna keep the way it is just because it's in such a good condition. We don't want to spend additional 15 to 20K to remodel this kitchen. And some of the points that we can maybe discuss is obviously changing the hanging lights is going to help. Changing the handle is going to help. changing the color of the appliances is going to help, right? To really freshen this up. But sometimes, I guess my question is a lot of times when we're doing the full renovation on a property, we will just want to copy the design on what is the highest price in the neighborhood. But in some cases, like this, where condition is pretty decent, we feel like we can maybe save some costs because at the end of the day, it's all about the timeline and how much money that we want to spend on the renovation, right? The project that you're currently working on is a full gut, right, from top to bottom. With this one, there's a certain features that we want to include or keep. Um, but what's your thought on that? If anybody asks you that question, right? Good condition, layout is decent, it's just outdated. How would you go about this one?
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to, like, the thing is, right now, I actually haven't gone to this property yet. So if you're just looking at something like this and you want to do a market analysis and say, okay, this is what a comparable property sells. There's always in the market and in every market, there's a plateau point where further improvements don't help very much. So if you need to spiffen a place up and make it just a little more desirable, you want to focus on things that are at eye level, right? So countertops, like in that case, it's already quartz or granite, so it's not. I can't see it to really tell. But the easiest thing for people to do is change countertops, especially if it's a dated countertop. In most situations, you will find that people will have some kind of a melamine countertop or something of like that, and it doesn't look very good. In those cases, it's an easy decision, and you want to just improve countertops. Improve countertops, change outlets, receptacles, things, anything that's at eye level should be a focus point. Anything that can be preserved is also going to be good. Now, anything that is preserved should be functional for one. So like the kitchen looks like looks good. I wouldn't necessarily decide to upgrade that. The troublesome part is that it's got a wood color and it's hard to necessarily match that. But handles on a kitchen, it's very easy to upgrade handles on an old kitchen, but even those, they don't look bad. The thing is that this looks already pretty good. Maybe the floor looks outdated. You could put some kind of a luxury vinyl plank onto the floor, and that will already change the whole aesthetic because they have a very modern ceiling. The ceiling is what, to be honest, looks completely out of place. But the thing is that this kitchen, it's in my opinion already too nice to want to do too much to it. Yeah. So the improvement will be relatively minor.
Would you change the faucet here?
Yeah, okay, so that's a good one. So if anybody's looking on like TikTok or Instagram and you see people showing off their really crazy fancy sinks or faucets, you can do some upgrades to simple things like that and put something extremely modern into something that is older, which is an aesthetic of its own. You see people will take these rustic old furnitures and they'll put them into either a new place or they'll have an old place and they'll put some nice, very new things in there to accent. It is an aesthetic and it does look. Would this be ideal for a flip? Maybe not so ideal for a flip, but if you're going to refurb and rent out a property and do something like that, then it's okay. The problem with if you're, let's say, flipping a property that looks like this is that you won't necessarily feel the need to, like, you're going to be combating in price. This is too livable, right? Ideally, if you're going to gut the whole place, it shouldn't be livable. So you can get such an amazing deal that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But at this point, I mean, I wouldn't be touching most of this. Maybe put in the floor. If the floor in any other area needs to be improved, then you have continuity going throughout the home and you can improve that and it'll look a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. Good point. Because here's the thing. I feel like the moment I need to touch one thing, because this is thought through already, and even look at this. They got a cutting board that matches the countertop, right?
Yeah, you can't change that.
I really don't want to touch any of this. I just want to like change the little things like this, and maybe replace the stainless steel appliances here, so it looks a little brighter. And I agree with you. I feel like this one needs to be the floor can be changed to the same color as the rest of the flooring, so it does look like it's continuous. there's no sectional um or yeah sectional area because right now we're trying to like keep everything open concept. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. No, honestly, I wouldn't be touching it. So this basically bridges into the point that uh, if you are trying to save money on renovations, if there are things that you can preserve them, right? Um, if you are if you do have let's say an apartment unit that you're looking to improve, easiest things to improve, it might still seem like it's expensive, but let's say things that make the biggest that are the easiest to do and aren't going to be heavily disruptive are things like flooring. Flooring is always going to be a huge improvement to anything, and it makes it very easy to clean. A lot of people, especially when it comes to rental property, they care a lot about cleanliness. So being able to have continuity of floor also means easy to clean, right? Because when you have all the crevices, changing of floors, changing of elevations, it becomes difficult to manage, and then it also like the tenant class will know and figure that out, and it's just these little things that make a place desirable or not, right? Obviously, the big things, the big ticket items you want to focus on are kitchen and bath, but those are also very expensive to do. And even when you are making a bathroom new, if you want to preserve anything, bathrooms, I find, there are, you know what, there are these panels that have started coming out of China, and we've started using them. They are remarkably resilient, and they are also very cost effective to use. So let's say you have a bathtub and you have a rental property and you want to freshen it up. Easiest things to change are the shower heads. Okay, if you look on Amazon and you just buy these accessory faucets, you can buy accessory faucets that will essentially that can replace your existing set. And even if you put it on older tiles, your shower will look pretty good. In fact, and we have tons of examples of this that we've done this in our rental properties where you just upgrade the faucet and the bathroom looks pretty nice. Also, going LV a vinyl plank onto the floor is an easy way to go. Vanities can get a little pricey depending on if you're working on like a tight budget or anything like that. But if you are trying to improve these things, faucets, very easy to replace, install, and it's like a nice accent piece. That's the thing that you're using most of the time, and it'll do it. Older showers with tile, people will go in there, cut out the grout lines, and then just put fresh grout. And the place looks clean, right?
Question for you, because you just mentioned about putting the vinyl flooring on the wall. Okay.
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
No. Vinyl flooring. Vinyl flooring. You put that in the floor, on the wall. Some of this product that came out from China is they have these big 4 foot by 8 foot acrylic panels. They look like tiles. It looks like a full tile. And if you get and there, you can buy them for about $100 to $200 depending on the quality, and you need like maybe 3 or 4 of them. But if you first of all you just glue these onto whatever's existing there, and then you can replace like it brings our costs down to upgrading the bathroom like all the way down to with labor about $1,200, right? It's crazy.
You can see the difference, right? Like when you see it closely and you touch it, you can feel like it's not. No, wow.
No, it's very. I mean, like, okay. Now, like the thing is that you can tell that it's glossy, but it's not like these. If you buy like the $200 one, it's not cheap. It's a very convincing product. Like ultimately, yes, you can tell, but this is what they started using in hotels, right? And they also started using these in a lot of tiny home builds, and they started using this in all kinds of things. If you're building alcove showers, you're literally gluing these things on, and they have these waterproof seals. You seal everything. It's glossy product, and you can dress it up very nice. And some of the stuff matches very well with your existing tile product that is already being made, right? So the stuff is getting a lot better. There is cheaper stuff out there that is not convincing at all, and it doesn't necessarily last, but some of the stuff is becoming very impressive. So if you have the opportunity, look into something every now and then, or try to use a different product, or at least see if somebody else has done it. Go see where it's been installed and see if you want to use it. But those are great ways to upgrade your place. in
Right,
order to make
asking for other
something good.
people as well. Where can we even look at or try to, I guess, buy from, like buy these type of products from? Can we just go to Home Depot, or it has to be a local supplier or Chinese
So I think you
suppliers?
missed out on that one, but I was ultimately talking about wholesalers. Indian wholesalers, Chinese, and Middle Eastern wholesalers. They all have different strengths. They all sell. They all have different advantages on different types of product. But yeah,
Okay.
ultimately, don't bother going to Home Depot. Breathe there is asking a question. I'm a noob, so part of the question: when planning renovations with value increase of property in mind, how to plan the financials, like how much to spend versus how much increase will it provide. So we do have a per square foot formula that we'll generally use. Ping, tell me what it is right now, the exact number. I think it's about what?
Yeah. So by the way, this is really for me because when I'm more like a numbers guy on the team. So and sometimes when Andrew, Roman, Skyler, when they're talking about the renovation breakdown, I get overwhelmed. So I learned that whatever they come up with a price for a specific job site, I started consolidating a bunch of different data, and I realized that whenever there's a certain, if we're not talking about, let's say, moving the wall, and if we're just talking about some apartment renovation, like there's no change in layouts and all that stuff, and everything has been drywalled. From that point, the cost per square footage is roughly about $40. Okay, for 2 bedroom apartment. Okay, so and obviously if we're talking about like 1 bedroom, the cost per square footage is gonna go up a little bit. So like 50, $55 each, depending obviously on the material. So I usually do two stage in my calculation. One is kind of like what I'm doing right now with this project, this specific project. I'm trying to like change I'm actually only removing one wall, but I'm changing the layout of the bathroom. But once I'm fully done that part, then that's a phase one calculation. Now, phase two calculation, usually I'm just doing $40 per square footage, and that will include the materials plus the labor. And that gave me a very good understanding of how much I need to budget for. So using this as an example, the main floor is about 1,800 square foot times $40. I already know that main floor, once I finish setting up the layout, conservatively is 72,000. And I just need to kind of rely on Andrew or Roman to kind of source a better deal or bring the cost lower. So usually you won't go over 72,000, right, for 18 square feet. Okay, sometimes they can probably like bring it down to like 60, 65, but I just want to kind of leave a bit of buffer. So, just in case there's any surprises or there's anything that I didn't include in my calculation.
Yeah, so typically a 2 bedroom apartment is going to be in and around 800 square feet, right? So if you're going by that calculation, you're going to be looking at what, $35,000, 38.7, 32. Okay, great. So yeah, $32,000. So you can get, and this is again doing this the way we're talking about it, not going out and just hiring like any contractor to go and do this. Contractors can do this, but then you also know that you can set this as a price and you can tender out the job. Because how do you know if you're pricing things reasonably? Well, you can, and it's also important to also understand what this includes. Like Ping said, leaving everything more or less in the same place. But we're talking about new floor, baseboards, trims. We're not doing big ticket items like windows, right? You're not replacing windows. We are doing pot lights, running some pot lights. And this also assumes, this is also excluding any permit costs. So if you are doing permits or anything like that and you're upgrading anything else, that's roughly what you're going to be including there. So all the basic stuff, cosmetic with some base electrical, minor plumbing upgrades, but ultimately kitchen, bath, floor, baseboard, trims, lights. Okay, and that'll paint, and that'll get you most of everything that you need. So that's how much you should be budgeting for, at least as a ballpark. And then your work is whatever it is that you don't end up spending, that's all gravy. Okay. Any other questions? Because actually, I just realized it's 7:53. Time was flying. I didn't cover half the things. If anybody has a question, type it in really quickly. I think I was talking something about sequencing of work. If you want to really assembly line push through your project, whatever renovation you're doing, if you can master the sequencing of work, you will save tons of money by understanding how to do volume work. And if you look at how volume people do it, even simple things like painting, for example, how much does it cost you to paint a house? if you happen to be doing renovations and you want to paint a house and you are going to be doing flooring, you're spray painting everything. You're going to get somebody in there with a sprayer and you're going to spray paint everything. They can paint what painters, it will take them like, you know, a few days to do it. You're going to go in there, they're going to have it done in a day. It cuts things down ridiculously. Painting is one of my favorite ways to save in terms of the comparable cost. And you can only do that if you properly account for the sequence of work. So one thing that always grinds my gears that really irritates me is when I come to a job site and contractors have installed the floor before they're done the freaking plastering or anything like that. Here's a good tip. If you're hiring a contractor, you want to make sure to establish what the requirement is for delivery of final product in order for them to get paid is. In other words, if they're going to give you a finished product, that product needs to be clean. That's what I tell them. You need to give me a clean product because if you don't give me a clean product, I can't tell if it's damaged or not. Flooring, stairs, doors, anything that they can mess up. And it's pretty much mostly flooring, stairs, and like even just with tiles or anything like that. You need to make sure that they give that to you clean and they can't get paid until it is clean. Okay? Yeah, and a lot of and as long as you say that at the beginning, you'll be pretty okay, right? Just make sure that they understand that because if you don't tell them that, a contractor's not going to manage their trades well, and then their trades are going to be walking over everything. But you see, if you tell them that the place has to be delivered clean and that you're not going to pay them at the place if it is not delivered to you in the state, you're going to see these contractors going to start covering the floors. They're going to start putting down cardboard. They're going to start protecting it. They're going to visit the property more often to make sure that their guys aren't screwing things up because they want to make sure that they're going to get that final paycheck, right? You should always hold back a reasonable amount of money to pay the contractor at the end to make sure that they can account for deficiencies. Okay, so these are all like really important things when it comes to sequencing of work. If you can learn how to do some of these things, you'll be able to save some money. Oh, okay. Message me Prahar again later, and we'll show you the. I'll show you the sheet. I'm gonna ping if you can see that in the chat. But okay. Does anybody else have any questions? You know, because like even some fun things that I do want to talk about. I really want to talk about permits and stuff and some of the interesting things that are out there, incentives, different programs, things that are easier to do, things that are not. But like, there's just so much to get into when it comes to that stuff. But right now, this has been like a good time for densification and, you know, employing value into your property without having to break the bank. And this is a good time to do that. You just have to know like what to spend and where to spend it so that you are actually adding value as opposed to just pouring money down the drain. Because some stuff people don't care about it. One of the things, by the way, we found that people don't care as much about is people, and you got to ask yourself this question: would you rather have a master bathroom or a home office, a separate home office, right? When you're improving a property, and yeah, different people, depending on the property, will find that they have different needs, right? The amount of bedrooms that people can install into a place. These are all things that you want to consider. Bedroom is way cheaper than a bathroom, obviously. So, you know, if you're doing any upgrades to a property, whether it's single family or duplex, this is something you should think about. Okay, I think we've gone through the most of the stuff. Yeah. As always, if anybody has any questions, ping, I guess we're going to wrap it up. Do you have anything else you want to add? Gonna assume not. So, with that, yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch, has any questions or anything like that, find me on Instagram, drop me a message. Happy to help. Otherwise, for the rest of you, I'm going to start getting into some of the sessions. What is it, Ping?
Sorry, I just realized I was muted.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, Parhar, are you in our school community? Because if you are, then just go into the free training. There's a couple, I guess, videos that we did. Like we did a little step-by-step underwriting for flips. Over there, there should be a link where you can download the flip calculator. Okay, and
okay.
If you don't have it, here's the link.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to add, Ping?
No, good session.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up there. If anybody has any questions around this stuff, like you might, it's not necessarily always going to be immediately applicable, some of the stuff that we're talking about, but if you can anticipate some of these things, you'll be able to look into it, pay attention to it, and when the time comes, you'll know how to use it, employ it. Okay. Anyway, guys, all right, we're going to wrap it up there, I think. Otherwise, we'll be in touch soon and chat later. Have a good one, guys.
Yep.